I don't remember when I stopped being a kid. Maybe it was the first time I had to change my baby brother's diaper because Mom was too hungover to get out of bed. Or maybe it was when I started packing lunches for my siblings before I even knew how to make a sandwich for myself. By the time I was 15, I was doing everything a parent should do: getting 3 kids ready for school, reheating last night's dinner, and helping my baby brother breathe through a fever, while Mom was out getting drunk with her boyfriend of the week. I gave up sleepovers, soccer, and being a teenager, not because anyone asked, but because no one else would step up. I thought one day my siblings would remember, maybe even say, "You held us together." But last month at a family dinner, my sister looked me in the eye and said, "You didn't really do anything for this family. If you've ever carried everyone else only to be forgotten, tell me where you're listening from, because I need to know I'm not alone." Mom didn't just leave us to fend for ourselves. She brought her mess home. I'd be in the living room, helping my little sister with her math homework, when Mom would stumble in with some guy. They'd collapse onto the couch, laughing too loud, hands all over each other, like we didn't exist. I'd try to keep my sister focused, saying, "What's 3 times 4?" But my voice would shake. How could it not, with them joking around just a few feet away? She'd look up at me, her eyes wide, and I'd force a smile, pretending it was fine. It wasn't. One night, I couldn't hold it in. Mom was sprawled on the couch with some loser, and I was spooning mashed potatoes onto my brother's plate. I set the spoon down and said, "Mom, can you please take this somewhere else? We're trying to eat." She sat up fast, her face twisting. "What did you just say?" she slurred. I took a breath. I said, "Maybe you should stay home and take care of your kids." Before I could blink, she grabbed her wine glass and threw it at me. It smashed against the wall, red splashing everywhere. "I didn't raise you to tell me how to be a mother," she screamed. My siblings froze, staring. I didn't cry. Not then. I just cleaned up the glass. Then there were the boyfriends. One of them, Rick, was a creep. He'd sit there, eyeing my 10-year-old sister, saying, "You're so pretty. Growing up fast, huh?" It made my stomach turn. One day, I found him in the kitchen with her, too close, his hand on her arm. I lost it. I shoved him hard, yelling, "Get away from her!" He stumbled back, laughing like it was a game, but he left. I told Mom later, and she just shrugged. "He's just being nice," she said. Nice. That's what she called it. And the food stamps. God, I hated those. Mom would shove the card at me and say, "Go get groceries." She never checked the balance, so I'd stand at the register, holding my breath, hoping it wouldn't decline. When it did, I'd have to put stuff back, cereal, juice, diapers, while people in line stared. I'd drag what I could afford home, and Mom would scream, "Why can't you stay under the limit? You're eating us alive." As if I was the one blowing cash on liquor. I started working at 12, sweeping floors at the store down the street for a few bucks. It wasn't legal, but we needed it. I'd come home exhausted, hands raw, and find Mom passed out, an empty bottle next to her. I didn't get to be a kid. I got to be the adult she wouldn't be. Years later, I thought things would be different. My siblings were grown, with jobs, partners, lives of their own. I'd done my part, raised them when no one else would, sacrificing my teenage years to keep us afloat. But instead of gratitude, I got erasure. They didn't just forget what I'd done. They rewrote the story entirely, casting Mom as the hero and reducing me to a shadow, a footnote barely worth mentioning. It started small, subtle enough to dismiss at first. My youngest sister, now a nurse with a steady paycheck, invited Mom to a luxurious spa day for her birthday. They got massages, facials, pedicures, the whole package. Later, Mom posted a photo on Facebook. The two of them beaming in fluffy white robes, glowing with relaxation. The caption read, "Even when times were tough, I never gave up on my kids." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening until it hurt to breathe. Times were tough because she was out drinking, leaving me to play mother, father, and breadwinner all at once. But there she was, soaking up the praise for never giving up. The comments flooded in. "You're such an inspiration. Best mom ever." My fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to type the truth, but I couldn't. I just closed the app, feeling the weight of their denial settle deeper. Then there was the therapy suggestion, a moment that still stings when I think about it. We were at a rare family dinner, one of those awkward gatherings we occasionally forced ourselves into. I made a passing comment about our childhood. Nothing heavy, just a mention of how tough it was to juggle school while raising them. My brother, now a lawyer with a sharp tongue, sighed dramatically. "You always bring that up," he said, his tone dripping with exasperation. "It's like you're stuck in the past." My sister, sipping her wine, nodded in agreement. "Maybe you should see someone, work through it." They even offered to pay, framing it as some generous act of charity. I sat there, my fork trembling in my hand, the food untouched. They thought I was the problem for remembering, as if the truth was a flaw I needed to fix. But the worst came at a family reunion last year, a memory that still haunts me. Relatives from all over gathered, laughing, swapping stories over plates of food. Mom stood up to give a toast, her voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. "I've been through a lot," she said, pausing for effect as the room hushed. "Raising 4 kids alone, struggling every day, but I did it. I never had help, but I made it through." The room erupted in applause, some cousins even wiping tears from their eyes. I sat frozen, my throat so dry I couldn't swallow. Alone? I'd given up my entire childhood for her kids, cooking, cleaning, working odd jobs while she was gone. She called herself alone, and they believed her. My uncle patted her back, saying, "You're a fighter." I wanted to stand up to scream, "What about me? What about everything I did?" But I didn't. I just sat there, invisible, the sound of their clapping drowning out my silent rage. It wasn't just that they forgot. It was that they chose to forget, actively rewriting history to suit their comfort. My brother once snapped at me, "You always remember things in a way that makes us feel guilty. We don't need to hear the same old stories." As if my truth was a burden they shouldn't have to carry. As if I'd done something wrong by holding our family together when it was falling apart. I'd spent years waiting for them to see me, to acknowledge what I'd given up. A simple "thank you" would have been enough. Instead, they erased me, painting me as the bitter one, the complainer. And I don't know how to forgive that. The spa day wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. Every Mother's Day, my siblings competed to shower Mom with gifts and glowing social media posts. "To the strongest woman I know," my sister wrote one year, attaching a photo of her and Mom laughing over coffee at some trendy cafe. I'd scroll past, my stomach twisting into knots. Strongest woman? I'd been the one staying up nights to finish their homework, working underage jobs to buy groceries, fending off creeps who lingered too close to our rundown apartment. But in their eyes, I was just the sister who complained too much, the one who couldn't let go. Once, at a cousin's wedding, Mom was holding court, telling anyone who'd listen how she'd sacrificed everything for us. I was standing right there, clutching a glass of wine I hadn't even sipped, the bitterness rising in my throat. A distant relative turned to me and said, "You're so lucky to have a mom like that." I forced a smile, my jaw tight, but inside I was screaming. Lucky? To have a mom who abandoned me to raise her kids? To have siblings who pretended none of it ever happened? I excused myself to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face to keep from breaking down. Even my attempts to bridge the gap failed miserably. I tried organizing a siblings trip once, hoping a weekend away might spark some real conversation, but they turned it into a gripe session about how I always play the victim. My sister leaned back in her chair, smirking. "You act like you were the only one who had it hard," she said. I wanted to laugh, a sharp, bitter sound. Hard? They'd had me to shield them from the worst of it. Mom's neglect, the hunger, the fear. Who'd shielded me? No one. But they couldn't see that or wouldn't. It was Christmas Eve, and the dining room was filled with the warm glow of candles and the rich aroma of roasted turkey and spiced cider. My siblings were laughing, clinking glasses, and heaping praise on Mom, who sat at the head of the table, basking in their adoration. "To the best mom ever," my sister said, raising her glass with a smile that made my stomach churn. That was it, the final straw. Years of swallowed pain and silent sacrifice boiled over, and I couldn't hold it in any longer. I slammed my hands on the table, making the dishes rattle. "Enough!" I shouted, my voice cracking with emotion. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. "You all think she's a saint? Let me show you the truth." I pulled out my old diary, its pages worn and yellowed. "Listen to this," I said, flipping to a marked page. "Age 12. Mom didn't come home again. I stayed up all night with the baby. She wouldn't stop crying." My voice wavered, but I pressed on. "Age 14. Sold my bike today to buy groceries. Cried in the bathroom so no one would see." Next, I scattered a handful of receipts across the table. "These are from the jobs I took. Bagging groceries, cleaning toilets, anything to keep us fed while she was out with her boyfriends." Then I held up a photo. Me at 15, exhausted, holding my little brother's hand. "This is who raised you," I said, my throat tight. "Not her, me." I took a deep breath and played the audio recording. Mom's voice filled the room. "That kid is so clingy. When is she going to leave?" My siblings gasped, but Mom just smirked and reached for her wine. I unfolded an email, my hands shaking. "This is from you, Mom, when I was 18. If you leave, don't come back. I've chosen my men over you." Finally, I told them about the day she left my youngest brother at the nail salon for hours while she was on a date. He was 6, terrified, and alone. I had to bike across town to find him. "Where were you, Mom?" My siblings sat in stunned silence, tears in their eyes. But Mom just shook her head and poured another glass of wine. "You're always so dramatic," she muttered. I stood there waiting for someone to speak, to acknowledge the truth. But the silence was deafening. I grabbed my coat and walked out, the door slamming behind me, leaving them with the weight of my words. After that Christmas dinner, I stepped out into the frigid night, the echo of my own voice still reverberating in my mind like a distant bell tolling for freedom. I'd finally unleashed everything. Years of pent-up words, sharp and jagged, spilling out onto the table like broken glass. Their faces, frozen in silence, stared back at me, unyielding as stone. But something inside me shifted. The chains I'd worn for so long, forged from duty, guilt, and unspoken expectations, snapped. Driving away, the house shrank in my rearview mirror, swallowed by the dark. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, a quiet lightness settled over me, delicate yet unshakable. For the first time, I wasn't lugging their burdens on my shoulders, wasn't tethered to their approval or their recognition. I was free. I found a small apartment across town, a modest sanctuary that belonged solely to me. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom with creaky wooden floors and thin walls. But it was mine. No echoes of obligation lingered here. I painted the walls a soft, soothing blue and hung photographs of places I'd always dreamed of visiting, cliffs in Greece, forests in Japan. I started therapy. I wrote a blog. I told the story they tried to erase. And one day, standing alone on a beach at sunset, with waves lapping at my feet and the sky on fire, I realized something. The anger had faded, the hurt had softened, and in its place, a deep, quiet peace. I wasn't the bitter one. I was the one who survived. I was free, and in that freedom, I found enough.